These are the stories of 10 of the greatest paintings in the world. I'm Andrew Marr. Art, not politics, is the great passion of my life. For me, it gets to the heart of what it is to be human. In galleries across the globe, there are great paintings, works made with almost supernatural skill, fierce passion, and extraordinary brain power. Now I want to tell stories behind some of the most iconic images in history, pictures like Leonardo's Mona Lisa, Van Gogh's Sunflowers, and Turner's Fighting Temeraire, paintings that represent the pinnacle of what people can do with paint and bristles.
He created a brand new way of depicting the world. The colours would fizz and pop on the surface.
It was like you could touch these people. It was like the portrait could speak to you.
Behind every picture, there is a story. I'm going to peel back the layers to find out more about the lives of their creators and the worlds they came from.
There was something about this middle-class Florentine housewife that intrigued him.
Why are these the paintings we all know and love? How were they created? And what makes them the greatest paintings in the world? Here we are in the centre of London, just north of Trafalgar Square, in the National Gallery, one of the great glories of British cultural life, and home to more than 2,000 of the world's finest paintings. Most of the paintings here have come from thousands of miles away, from Italian hill towns, Europe's major cities, and Britain's rural counties. The men and women who created them could never have guessed they'd end up here. But there's one painting hanging in the National Gallery specifically designed for these walls, even if the painter concerned couldn't bear to let it out of his sight during his lifetime. It is, of course, the Fighting Temeraire. It's a haunting image. To the backdrop of a pink, grey, orange sunset chugs a small dark steamer, pulling a shimmering, pale sailing ship. This is a painting that has captured the imagination of generation after generation. I've sort of lived with this picture for most of my life. One of my schoolrooms when I was a kid had a print of it, and I can remember worrying that the big ship didn't have any sails out, which is kind of the point. I was a little bit thick. Some of you will have done jigsaws of the Fighting Temeraire, others will have eaten biscuits out of tins with the Temeraire on the lid. It's everywhere. But why? What is it about this painting that resonates even now? Well, for starters, it was made by a man that many see as Britain's finest ever artist, Joseph Mallard William Turner. Turner was the kind of artistic superstar of British painting in the early 19th century. He was particularly well known for his seascapes. This was still very much a seafaring country, and Turner was the master painter of all of that. Time and time again, Turner relished saltwater drama, the storms, the heart-stopping moments of wreckage and loss. So why was it this calm, limpid seascape, silent, melancholy, that meant so much to him? So the story of the picture is very, very simple and straightforward. The Temeraire, which had fought with Nelson at Trafalgar, is finally being tugged away to a shipbreaker's yard on the Thames, and she's being taken there by one of the newfangled steam paddleboat tugs that were on the Thames at the time. Turner brought his canvas to life with a flurry of confident brushwork, bold strokes of his palette knife, and even the press of his thumb. Now, these are pretty intimidating walls for any painting to hold its own. Turner's Temeraire is hemmed in on all sides by the greatest works of the greatest painters in the Western canon. And yet, time and again, the Fighting Temeraire is voted Britain's favourite painting. And indeed, it's recognised across the globe as an iconic piece of 19th century art. So, what's the secret of the Fighting Temeraire? To answer that, we have to go back to this painting's origins, because behind the image, so simple and so patriotic, lies another story of class, ambition, and opportunism. A story just as British, but rather more calculated. The story of this painting and the artist who created it may begin just a few hundred yards away from the National Gallery, but a world away from the grand institutions of the high and mighty.
Turner was a Londoner. He was born in a narrow, dark little street called Maiden Lane in Covent Garden, right in the heart of the capital. His father was a wig maker and a barber and had a shop in Covent Garden.
Turner was extremely working class. Nowadays, if your parent had a hair salon in Covent Garden, you'd be living a good life, but not back then. His sister died at the age of 5, and his mother ended up in a mental asylum. But he used to love to draw and paint, and that was his way of finding comfort in a world that was slowly being taken from him with the loss of his family.
Turner's reassurance would always come in the form of brushes, oils, and canvas. Even at this early age, he showed the same passion that would be the driving force behind his Temeraire. His talent, particularly to his father, was obvious from the start.
Because of the shop, the family were brought into the path of some wealthy and influential men, and Mr. Turner Sr. took full advantage of this circumstance. He used his shop as his son's earliest exhibition venue, putting his juvenile watercolours for display and then charging his customers 1 shilling to see them, which might not sound like a lot of money, but 1 shilling is the entrance fee to the Royal Academy, at the time the most prestigious art venue. So it shows just how ambitious he is for his son at this time.
Turner instinctively understood what people wanted, and he was making money from his art, his watercolour landscapes, town scenes and monuments, before he even reached his teens. But this barber's son wanted more.
From the age of 14, which was young even in those days, he was admitted to the Royal Academy for his precocity in painting and drawing. And from the moment he started to exhibit, people loved his work.
It's fair to say he explodes onto the British art scene. His watercolours are the first thing. They're described as miraculous. People can't believe the effects that he manages to achieve in a medium that's very underrated at this time. Almost straight away, it becomes clear that Turner is a star. He is made a Royal Academician at the youngest age ever, only 26 years old.
Right from the beginning, Turner would draw and paint what he knew best. And he was really a child of the Thames. He was born just a stone's throw from the river, and all his life he was obsessed by water. Calm water, dangerous, stormy water, boats, ships, and the British all afloat. This was an artist determined to render the world he was living in, the here and now, directly onto his canvas. Turner was inspired by almost everything around him. And the work he made was different. It was wilder, brighter, more expressive, somehow more urgent. He was pushing the boundaries of what could be done with oil and pigment, and it was making him rich. But although Turner had enjoyed his first delicious taste of acclaim and earned enough money to lift him and his father far from their shop, he wanted much more. He wanted, and which serious artist doesn't, a legacy. He wanted paintings which would live long after he had died. The Fighting Temeraire is one of the most recognizable paintings in the world. But what's the real story behind this evocative image? And why was it quite so important to the artist who created it, J.M.W. Turner? It was certainly the work of a man who had transcended a difficult childhood with extraordinary talent. It was clear, almost as soon as he picked up his first piece of chalk, that Turner was something special. The first part of his life is success upon success upon success. This was an artist who in his 20s had taken London by storm. At just 29, he opened his own gallery and began selling hundreds of paintings every year. His bright, skillful maritime scenes and landscapes couldn't have come from any other hand, and it wasn't just the public that couldn't get enough. In 1807, he was appointed a professor at the prestigious Royal Academy. High, mighty, but Turner wanted higher still. In 19th century London, this was an astonishing rise for a boy from a barber's shop. But although he never lost his Cockney accent and remained proud of his origins all his life, there was one area where his background was causing real trouble for Turner. The man who'd create the Temeraire wanted not just cash and respect in his life, but a legacy. He wanted his painting to outlive him long after his death, and that meant big commissions, and that meant catching the eye of King George IV.
He really, really wanted a royal commission. He wanted the chance to paint something for the king.
He knew he was good, so he was arrogant, really. He believed he was very clever and he wanted people to appreciate what he did.
A lot of people didn't take to Turner. There was a lot of snobbery, and that's probably because of his personality. You know, he didn't hold back, and it wasn't quite the right flavour within genteel company.
And then finally he got the chance he'd been waiting for. George IV was a passionate collector of souvenirs from the Napoleonic Wars, and he was keen for a painting commemorating its most famous sea battle.
Excitingly for him, in 1822, he is commissioned to paint a picture of the Battle of Trafalgar, which is destined for part of a decorative scheme in the state apartments at St James's Palace.
It's now hanging in London's National Maritime Museum. This image is the precursor to Turner's Temeraire, and it delivers on a remarkable scale. The sailors on board are almost miniaturized by Nelson's flagship, the colossal HMS Victory, which dominates the frame. Even Nelson, in the throes of death, is reduced to a matchstick figure, and yet the human drama still packs a mighty punch. For the senior curator here at Greenwich, Quintin Colville, it takes pride of place at his museum.
What you can see here is the height of the Battle of Trafalgar. Nelson's flagship, HMS Victory, is in the foreground, dominating the scene. Around it are clustered other warships, British, French and Spanish, engaged in one of the great naval battles of all time. You can see in this painting that Turner is deeply concerned with the cost of war and the human dimension of the war, which he brings to us through these resilient British sailors in the thick of the fight.
You get a real sense of the sort of the gory details, people falling from the riggings, the shattered masts and the torn sails, but also the bodies in the foreground, drowning hands rising from the bloody waters. That really confronts you.
If this painting was all about winning the favour of the court, Turner had taken some remarkable risks. It really wasn't at all what they'd expected.
The painting attracted a good deal of criticism when it was first unveiled at St James's Palace. One of the things that was commented upon at the time was the way in which perhaps he merged different periods of the battle together. But it was also the details of rigging and masts and spars and signals that had people hot under the collar.
Turner could feel royal approval and perhaps his one and only chance to win it disappearing. His big gamble had failed.
The public wanted something more esteemed, more proper, more respectful. It wasn't what they wanted in terms of a commemorative painting.
George IV was also critical of the painting, and ultimately it did not remain at the place where the commission was intended, St James's Palace, but was given to the Naval Gallery at the Royal Hospital in Greenwich.
Turner got very angry. He felt by then he was the artist. They'd asked him to paint it. They should have let him have free rein, and he painted it in the best way possible. And he didn't want to paint for the king anymore.
Disaster. Turner's attempt to capture a key moment from British history had been consigned to history, and his ability to leave a lasting mark on British art seemed out of reach. He'd had his moment, and he'd blown it.
In particular, the public was struggling with the very bright and vibrant colours that Turner tended to use. They also struggled with this characteristic haziness that many of Turner's later pictures in particular demonstrate. For a contemporary audience who are preconditioned to expect a very high level of detailed finish, this was very problematic. They couldn't read the brushstrokes for the metaphors that they were meant to be for sort of dabs of light. They could only see them as very loose, unfinished, and therefore rough and undesirable patches of paint.
But this working-class barber's son hadn't worked so hard for so long just to fade away. If the way to the public's heart was to give them a ripping yarn, then for his next piece, that's just what he'd do. And in 1838, as he reached the grand old age of 63, a national event gave him what all of us need at some point, a second chance. This is a narrative painting in that it tells a story, and Turner really wanted it to tell a story. In fact, the full title of the painting is The Fighting Temeraire, Tugged to Her Last Berth to be Broken Up, 1838, a specific moment in a specific year. Although the Napoleonic Wars had happened 30 years before, there was a revival of interest in the subject, spurred in part by King George's own fascination with it.
This interest in the Navy manifests itself in several ways, which I think is why it's so interesting. There's a newly cleared area of London just by the Strand, and it was decided to call it Trafalgar Square. At the same time, they decide to have a competition for a monument to go in Trafalgar Square, and that's when the idea for Nelson's column came along. Everyone is not only talking about Nelson and the Battle of Trafalgar, they're talking about the Royal Navy in general.
Nelson mania had well and truly swept the nation.
All of these objects relate either to the Battle of Trafalgar or to the death of Admiral Lord Nelson. And they range across different classes, different groups of income. You can see cheap, mass-produced ceramics like mugs and cups. A very expensive object over here, a crocus planter. Down here, there are children's toys modelled on Nelson's funeral procession.
The names of the great battleships were on everyone's lips: the Victory, the Defiance, the Conqueror, and of course the Temeraire.
They required objects like this to bring the personalities of those who fought, and also the ships themselves, into their sitting rooms, into their lives, into their houses. So these objects were the essential currency for bringing naval glory and valour into people's real worlds.
This had been the biggest conflict of a generation, their Great War, and the commanders and sailors who made up those fleets were still celebrated heroes. This was still very much a maritime naval country, very proud of its navy. What happened to sailors, what happened to ships, was absolutely crucial to the whole country. Turner knew that, and painting that was his great speciality and skill. So when Turner heard that one of the warships, the Temeraire no less, was going to be towed down the Thames on its way to the scrapyard, he knew this could be a very powerful image.
The Temeraire was a symbol of national security. She was a symbol of sea power, a symbol of royal naval might, and people knew that that is what had kept them secure. That is what essentially had won the Napoleonic Wars. And that meant that when a ship was taken away, perhaps captured by the enemy, very rare occasion, or in the case of the Temeraire, dismantled, then there was a real sense of loss and grieving felt by the nation.
The Temeraire, at this stage still known by its naval nickname, the Saucy Temeraire, had had a hugely important role at Trafalgar.
When HMS Victory came under very heavy fire from the French warship Redoutable, it was the Temeraire that came to the Victory's rescue. moving alongside and in fact firing a terrible broadside into the stern of the French warship.
She has then rescued Nelson from losing his ship, and then he has captured another ship, and this is all within the first hour or so of the battle. And it's that story of her which is the basis of her fame.
All warships, in the eyes of their crews, have personality, something distinctive about them in the way that they handle. They provide a role that is not simply one of fighting, but of protecting those who live within them. But beyond that, when they've been connected with great events, like Trafalgar, for instance, they carry a popular appeal. Their name becomes known and travels far and wide.
By September 1838, she was long out of date as a warship. For the past 25 years, she'd been in service on the home front, even being used to house prisoners down in Cornwall. But despite that, she hit headlines across the country when she at last set off for the Breakers' Yard in Rotherhithe.
That was the largest ship to be broken up. It was taken the furthest along the Thames of any of the warships left over from the Battle of Trafalgar. So it was quite a momentous occasion, and Turner was very good at capturing dramatic moments in the history of his life.
The British came and flocked to see this because you were welcoming home heroes. This wasn't just any old ship, this was a hero. It was very important to the British morale.
That's what's so clever about Turner painting the Temeraire. He was tapping into the spirit of the country at just the moment when, from out of the brick dust and the squalor, Trafalgar Square was beginning to take shape. So he had the glorious popular subject for his painting. But could he do justice to this opportunity? This was the chance to overcome the disappointments of the last decade and leave a lasting legacy. How could one image convey the immense weight of a nation mourning for an era that was about to end? The Fighting Temeraire is much more than simply an attempt to catch a moment in time. By choosing that subject at that period in history, Turner, a man always with one eye on the public mood, was setting himself up for a win. The Napoleonic Wars engulfed a continent in conflict for more than 10 years, climaxing at sea in the bloody clash of the Battle of Trafalgar. So just over 3 decades later, in 1838, Londoners were fascinated by the fate of the Temeraire, that celebrated old warhorse which had fought valiantly in Lord Nelson's fleet. Hundreds of people flocked to see her final voyage.
For most of the population, these warships, these ships that kept them safe at night, they kept the Frenchmen from the door, operated beyond the horizon, often on the other side of the world. And yet here was a chance to actually see one in the flesh. Beautiful wine glass shape of her hull that's all been made by hand by Englishmen in Chatham. So she's a symbol of Britishness, a symbol of British sea power, and she's something to be enjoyed.
It was a massive task to break her down. She'd been built from 5,000 oak trees, which left a lot of wood to be reused.
It's had a real history. We know that sailors left their marks on the gun decks. They left graffiti all over it. So this was not an inanimate object. This is an object that's been inhabited by hundreds of men for years and years and years. It's something that really just breathes history.
It would have been brought for salvage. People wanted souvenirs from it, so the wood would have been used to build houses from it, for example.
If you look closely enough, there are still some clues that reveal the eventual fate of the remains of this iconic ship. Hidden away in Rotherhithe is St. Mary's Church. Dating back to 1716, it has a close connection to Britain's seafaring history, and in it are 2 large chairs and 1 altar made from the wood of the broken Temeraire. Father Mark Nichols is the rector here.
This was a very busy part of London, connecting with the Empire. The Navy was built nearby, and the idea, I think, that Turner had about the Temeraire was a link with the past and a change into the modern era. And to have these things here really connects us with our local and national history.
Sir Henry Newbolt wrote a ballad titled The Fighting Temeraire that said, "She's fading down the river, but in England's song forever." Everyone wanted to have a slice of the legacy of this historic ship.
We know that a barometer was made from her wood. We know that a gong stand was made from her wood, a chair, and there's even the story of someone having a wooden leg made out of her wood. And it's nice to think that there are perhaps little pieces of the Temeraire in houses all over London.
The nation had woven the legend of the Temeraire into its past, present, and future. The big question was, how would Turner deliver such a weight of emotion on canvas? He was a very, very aggressive and rivalrous painter. He liked to take on his rivals like Constable and the rest of them and show that he was the best. So whenever Turner produced a special picture like this one, he was making a statement. This is going to knock your socks off. All across this canvas, you can see the creative and even experimental techniques Turner applied to his Temeraire. Some parts are painted with minute precision. The detail on the ship, for example, renders every facet of her hull with fine, flickering strokes. While across the sky, he's used much thicker, almost angry slatherings of paint to bring the canvas to dramatic life. Turner was an obsessive observer of skies, constantly sketching, constantly noting the skies as they changed. Nobody who hadn't done that would have had the confidence to paint something which looks like a hugely glowing, pulsating sunset, and yet when you actually look at the sun itself, the disk of the sun, it's a kind of dirty grey. It's not bright at all. The brightness comes from everywhere else in the picture. Using a technique called scumbling, Turner was able to infuse his dappled clouds with power and texture. He added layer after layer of weak, thin glaze before gently dragging the bright colours of a sunset across his canvas with a heavily laden brush, leaving parts of the underglaze still shining through. Right in the middle of the sunset, you have great lines of dark red and brown, very unexpected when you look at it closely, and yet the overall effect is a completely convincing, pulsating sunset. But while Turner had used his creative talent to depict what had been a real event, this isn't exactly an accurate record of the Temeraire's last voyage. In fact, Turner has used considerable artistic license. He always claimed that he'd seen the ship going by himself as it was going to be broken up, but that cannot be quite true, or if it is, he's deliberately changed what he remembered, because the real Temeraire at this point would have been a poor old wormy hulk, a great lump of rotting wood, not the beautifully accoutred ship that Turner has painted.
So we've got the ship painted looking like a ghost in beautiful white and gold, when actually it was yellow and black. He painted one tug leading it. There would have been two leading it. He moved the tug's funnel to the back so that the billowing smoke is almost heralding the ship behind it. The Temeraire itself has tall masts and some furled sails, which by the time it was being broken up, all that was chopped down to make it easier to be tugged along. So the whole image is fabricated.
He's painted the sunset in that painting, because a sunset in a painting, the narrative is that it's the end of something. Something's coming to close, like it's the end of the day. But the sunset is depicted on the wrong side of the painting. Turner artistically moved it over to the other side of the canvas. And why has he painted the moon in the painting as well at the same time? Well, sometimes you can see the moon in the early morning as well as the sunset. And other people say he painted it to show that time was passing, that it was almost like a funeral march, and slowly going through day and night with the sun and the moon, she was being brought into her final resting place.
The painting is very aesthetically pleasing and beautiful. It's a wonderful study in contrasts. On the one side, you have this beautiful silvery spectral ship illuminated by the moon, very quiet and very understated. And that contrasts beautifully with the explosion of flamboyant, energetic, fiery colour on the other side, the dynamics of the sun rising or setting.
But was this the sun's setting on a past era, a Britain before steam? Much has been made of the new technology at the heart of this painting, the steam engine. And Turner must have had a keen sense of the Industrial Revolution which was then exploding all around him. Could the Fighting Temeraire be about how this new steam power was replacing the customs and the history of old?
On a simple level, it's very easy to read. You don't have to be a historian of 19th century art to be able to unpick the story of the sailing ship being towed by the steamship, and it's about one age passing into another. But that simplicity belies the very complex issues that Turner brings within it. And like all great works of art, it can be interpreted in different ways. So is it celebratory? Is it sad? Is it poignant? I think it's above all an image of hope.
A lot of people said, oh, this is an example of Turner's unhappy with the changing of era where you've got the great wooden walls of the Age of Sail being dragged to their death by steam power. In fact, you realise that one of the most beautifully painted bits of the entire painting is the steamer, it's the tug. And Turner is celebrating that tug. He's celebrating steam power. He's celebrating the new England as much as he's mourning the loss of the old.
But for Turner, it would be the public and the critical response to his painting that would really be crucial. The subject of Turner's most important painting was remaining relevant. But no matter how much he tapped into the public mood, there was a new problem looming on Turner's horizon. That problem was that Turner would be up against a host of contemporaries all competing for pride of place at the Royal Academy show, the best slot for the most important moment of the year. Turner knew that how his work was received at this prestigious event could make or break its wider reception. But Turner's luck hadn't run out quite yet. By 1839, the Royal Academy had moved into a space in the new National Gallery on the edge of Trafalgar Square. So Turner's painting of a heroic Napoleonic-era warship couldn't have had a better view. And Turner had one final trick up his sleeve. Not only was his painting to be displayed in a location essentially twinned to its subject matter, Trafalgar Story, Trafalgar Square, but Turner was also on the hanging committee that year as well, which meant he could choose the perfect position for his painting. This is an unprecedented tale of luck and good planning. There was literally nothing more that Turner could do. He had created a masterpiece, and to promote it, he had fired off every cannon he had. All he could do now was stand back and wait for the reception. J.M.W. Turner knew that he was painting his masterpiece, the Fighting Temeraire, in the last phase of his artistic life. He was in his mid-60s by the time he'd finished it, and just as the sun was setting in his hard-worked canvas, so it was on his brilliant career. The Royal Academy show could be the last chance to secure his legacy. In 1839, Turner's masterpiece was finally put on display here at the National Gallery in a space reserved for members of the Royal Academy for everyone to see. Alongside it, Turner placed an altered extract from Thomas Campbell's poem, Ye Mariners of England, which read, "The flag which braved the battle and the breeze no longer owns her."
It's a combination of perfect factors. Turner's own very specific painterly style, the subject matter that he's best known for, but also this moment in time, the ethos that he's trying to capture. And above all, it is a picture about Britain. You look at the painting and you see a British ship. It's on a British river, the River Thames, the symbol of London. And of course, we also have the other great symbol of the nation at the time, the steamer, part of the age of steam, the Industrial Revolution, of which Britain is a world leader. Things which are important to the national agenda are encapsulated within this picture.
But would it be the hit that Turner craved? The answer is an emphatic yes. The Victorian public went crazy for it.
Turner's painting was rapturously received. If you read the reviews of his painting, people are realising they're actually seeing something that's never been done before. He's a genius, he's an innovator, and he's creating something fundamentally new.
People flocked to see it out of respect, not just to the painting, but to the history and to the members of their family that they'd lost. It was seen as majestic.
The Fighting Temeraire is universally beloved, and it's almost as though he's reached the epitome of his career with the Temeraire. It encapsulates all of the things that he's been working towards during his career.
The London that Turner grew up in might have been changing fast, and the country that had once embraced him as its finest artist might have started to look to the next generation coming up through the Academy. But just for this moment, old Turner had the nation in his hands. He was a patriotic man. The Temeraire was his personal tribute to the country he loved, and perhaps that's why, for the rest of his life, Turner never let this painting out of his sight.
Turner liked it so much, he had a pet name for it. He called it his darling, which I think is really sweet.
The love of Turner's life was the Fighting Temeraire. He didn't want to sell it, and when he was offered a cheque for £5,000, he still refused to sell it.
It's almost as much as the ship itself was sold for, and Turner turns this amount of money down, and even when he's offered a blank cheque, he still refuses to part with the picture. So clearly he recognises that this is a statement of a great importance for him as an artist.
Although Turner remained one of the most famous artists in England until his death, by the late 1830s, a new wave of younger painters were superseding him. And it hurt when his own evolving technique after the Temeraire, his radical old age, went unappreciated.
As time went on, he painted fewer details, more impasto, thicker paint, quicker brush marks, more of the atmosphere than the actual place. And quite a few people criticised this. They said, these aren't paintings. And he was angry, he was furious because he knew what he was doing and he was just moving art on. He'd done that at the beginning of his life. He'd painted the detailed works. Now he was painting atmosphere and light.
Turner had not devoted his entire life to art just to be forgotten, and towards the end of his life, he made sure that neither he nor his paintings would fade into obscurity.
He wanted to leave a legacy for Britain, and he wrote in his will that he wanted all his works kept together and shown together.
Turner was obsessed with his legacy, and the last few years of his life, he made absolutely certain that his paintings were in the locations he wanted them to be in, framed in the way he wanted them framed, so they could be appreciated by the public in the way he wanted his paintings to be appreciated.
Turner died in his house on the banks of the Thames, the river he'd loved all his life, at the age of 76, on the 19th of December, 1851.
Turner's funeral was organised by his fellow academicians. His body lay in state in his gallery, and then it was taken and interred in no less a place than St Paul's Cathedral. I mean, what greater endorsement for national heroism is there? And you can find him there in the crypt today, lying next to Sir Joshua Reynolds, the first president of the Academy, which I think would have pleased Turner greatly, and also not that far from Lord Nelson.
They're lying almost side by side, and it wouldn't surprise me if he'd particularly asked for that to happen.
His will stipulated that the entire contents of his studio be left to the nation. That's nearly 300 oil paintings and more than 30,000 drawings and sketches, of which the most important is, of course, the Fighting Temeraire.
If you go and look at the Fighting Temeraire now in the National Gallery, it's Turner's gift to you from all of those years ago. So it hasn't been kept hidden away in the hands of a private collector. He painted it for the nation, he painted it for us.
Turner's name is as secure today as it was back then. If we see a particularly colourful, flamboyant, sun-drenched sky, we call it a Turner sunset, and I think that ties very clearly back to the fame of the Temeraire.
We love the Fighting Temeraire because it's a part of our history where we were heroic, where we defeated the enemy. It was not only Turner's darling, it was our darling.
There's only one place to end this story, and it's, of course, back here in the National Gallery, where Turner's darling is displayed permanently, just as he always wanted. Now, if this was simply disguised autobiography, we wouldn't love it so much. The truth is that Georgian Britain, the country that had fought the Napoleonic Wars, was not simply vanishing into the sunset, or if it was, then a new Britain, the much more vigorous, industrial, imperial, Victorian Britain, symbolised by that tugboat, was about to emerge. Yet there's no getting away from it. This is a fundamentally backward-looking, nostalgia-soaked image, and its popularity makes me ask, are we British basically still children of the sunset rather than of the dawn? Whether we are or not, we remain vigorously commercial and money-grubbing, which allows me to end this film in a way that Joseph Mallard William Turner would have been delighted with. Because here is the new British £20 note. And look who's on it. Yes, it's Turner. And look what's on it. Yes, it's the Fighting Temeraire. This is by far the most famous and the most loved image that Turner ever made. That sun may be low in the sky, but it has not set for nearly 200 years. Next time, there are people who think that great art should be like a warm bath. This is more like a barbed wire face mask. How one of the darkest events in Spanish history.
It's the catastrophe which alerts us to what modern warfare was going to look like.
Met a prolific artist's complicated love life.
He referred to women as either goddesses or doormats and weeping machines.
It could only be Pablo Picasso's Weeping Woman.